All right, next is we call UM and UIM coverage. What is the most important coverage you have on your auto insurance policy? That's called a rhetorical question, ladies and gentlemen. That means this. UM and UIM is short for uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. All right, so what is that coverage? That coverage is the coverage that's designed to protect you in the event that the driver that hits you and hurts you or that kills a family member either doesn't have insurance as required or doesn't have enough insurance to fully compensate you if you're injured. This is the protect your family coverage. This is where you get control to protect yourself from the drivers who are out there who don't have insurance or don't have enough insurance to fully compensate you. In Pennsylvania, do people know what the minimum limits of liability coverage are? The minimum amount that people are required to buy in order to drive on the highway. It's $15,000 per person, $30,000 per accident. So you have a loved one who dies, and the other driver has $15,000. They're complying with the law, but what's that going to do? You have an injury that, as a result of it, you lose your job. You can't work. You're disabled for the rest of your life. What is that going to do for you and your family? You end up destitute. And they say, well, what? I can just go after the other person's assets. I can try to get their bank accounts. I can try to get their houses. Let me tell you something. That is incredibly difficult to do. And in 95% of the cases that we have, people do not have assets that you can go after. If one spouse is at fault in an accident and all their assets are held jointly with their other spouse, you can't touch those assets. They're untouchable unless there's some separate negligence on the other spouse. Most people who either don't have homes, who rent, you can't go after the rental property, or if they have a house, most people have a what? A mortgage, right? And the bank gets first dibs. So going after the house, you're going to have a mortgage to deal with. And most people aren't living their lives with $500,000 in their bank accounts. In addition, if you do go out there and you get a big verdict against somebody and they don't have a lot of assets, the jury hands the verdict to the judge. The judge enters the verdict as a judgment. The defense attorney walks up and says, please give me that judgment, leaves, drives to Allentown and files bankruptcy for the person, and that wipes out the judgment. So as a realistic matter, in what I always call in the real world, when the person that hurts you, all you're going to get is what their auto insurance liability limits are. That's it. So underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage is what you use to protect yourself. Now, remember I told you that the amount you pick for liability insurance is relevant to other coverages that you might want to buy? Here's where that is. You are permitted to buy underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage in amounts up to your liability limits, but not more. So if I picked $100,000 in liability insurance for when I'm at fault, the most that I can buy of uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage is $100,000. I can't buy 200, I can't buy 250. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to know. The second thing you need to know is it is optional coverage, meaning you don't have to buy it. So you got to be careful. A lot of people go to their agents and they say, you know, I don't like buying my car insurance. I want full coverage, but I don't want to pay too much. And the agent then starts going through it and arbitrarily starts chopping things off or limiting them. A lot of them go to the underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage. And you don't know. And by the way, if you don't know what this coverage means, and you didn't know it before I start, don't feel bad. Because 90% of my clients don't know what it means. from the least sophisticated to the most sophisticated, to lawyers that I have as clients, to doctors, to financial professionals, people who are supposedly sophisticated in this arena, business owners. They don't understand what it means. Their agent shows them, oh, okay, I have this under and uninsured stuff, and my liability limits are $100,000, but you said I only need 15 of this. Okay, so I'll get 15, because you can buy it in amounts less than your liability limits. You always have to buy it in amounts equal to your liability limits. That's rule number one. Rule number two is Pennsylvania has this unique provision when it comes to this type of coverage that I have seen, I think, maybe one other state in the entire United States of America. And it's called stacking. What the heck is stacking? Stacking means that you multiply the amount of coverage you bought by the number of cars you have on the policy. So, if I buy $50,000 in under and uninsured motorist coverage, which is 100 per person, I have 4 cars on my policy, how much under and uninsured motorist coverage do I have per person? 200 grand. You go from 50,000 to 200. Remember that declaration sheet I showed you earlier where the person had $250,000 in liability insurance? What do they have? $1 million. And it's not expensive. This is what they don't tell you. There are certain coverages that are the most expensive part of you know what your most expensive coverages are? Liability and actually your property damage. Property damage coverage is very expensive because at the end of the day, more accidents involve only property damage than they do bodily injury. So if you look at your premiums, you're going to see that a large part of it goes to liability and also to property damage. Now, so if you buy stacked coverage, that's tremendously protective, right? You know, imagine that other policy that have $1 million. $1 million in coverage is going to cover most of the really bad things that can happen to you. Now, obviously it's not going to be enough if someone passes away because of an accident or they're a paraplegic. But you know, the lion's share of even pretty catastrophic injuries, $1 million at least will let you know, and I always like to use the words, that I'll be okay, that I'll be able to pay my mortgage and my utilities, that I'll have some money there to help the kids with college, that at least will be there. Will it be perfect? No. But at least you can stay in your house and educate your kids and have some money there to at least protect you once you get to retirement age. Okay, well, as we say here, you can reject that coverage. You do not have to purchase it. You have to sign a form to do it, but you can reject it. It is optional coverage. So if the agent's like, well, you know, I don't think you really need this, and he or she starts, or you don't need it stacked, which you can waive too, and they start to stick those pieces of paper in front of you to waive under and uninsured motorist coverage, to waive stacking of under and uninsured motorist coverage, you go, oh, no, I'm not signing those. And as I also said, you can buy it up to your amounts of liability, but you don't have to. We call that a sign down. Those are the ones I have to tell all of you that when I see that, I go nuts. It infuriates me. I have had cases where I had people who bought $250,000, $500,000 in liability insurance limits. And I look at their declaration sheet, and they have 5 cars on the policy, and they're catastrophically injured. And I look at their declaration sheet, and they had selected $15,000 unstacked in uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage. I mean, you know, it's just like somebody punches you in the face. And I'm not mad at them because, again, they don't get it. I'm mad at the people who are advising them on what they need because there is no logic behind that decision whatsoever. It barely saves you any money, and look what it costs you. You go from $15,000 to down from $1 million. That's a catastrophic result. Bill, next one. Now, insurance companies don't like this coverage because they have to pay it. And what they do a lot of times when they have coverages they don't particularly like, they try their best, if they can, to what we call limit it. So they create what are called exclusions in their policies. One of the exclusions that was one of their favorites was what we called the household or family car exclusion. That exclusion would say that if I have a policy that covers my wife and my daughter who lives with me has a policy that covers her car, and she gets involved in an accident in her car due to the negligence of an underinsured driver, she cannot come to my policy, although she's my relative and she lives with me and would be an insured under my policy, to get underinsured or underinsured motorist coverage, only her own. That's called the household or family car exclusion. And that exclusion was upheld for many, many years until 2015 when the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania threw it out. There was another one that the insurance companies have loved over the years called the regular use exclusion. That exclusion was designed to deny you coverage if you are regularly using another vehicle at the time when you're hurt. I'll give you an example of a situation. I'm a dad, I have 3 children, and they go to high school. And so they're insured under my policy for under and uninsured motorist coverage. They take the bus to school every day. That's the only way they can get to school. And there's a huge accident with the bus that's somebody else's fault. And so I go, well, my children were seriously injured, and I want them to get underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage under my policy because they live with me. They're insured under my policy. And the insurance company goes, oh, no, sorry. They regularly use that bus to go to school. So they don't get any coverage at all. None. Zero. You have a friend you drive to work with every day, and every month you switch over who's driving the car. If your friend happens to be driving the car during that 1 month and you get injured while you're in your friend's car, sorry, Charlie. You don't get any underinsured and uninsured motorist coverage. Well, I didn't like that very much. I didn't like it at all. I had a case with a police officer who was at an accident scene doing his job to protect the public, and he gets hit by 2 negligent underinsured drivers. And he was very seriously injured, and those drivers didn't have enough insurance to fully compensate him. He had done an excellent job in protecting his family. He bought an insurance policy for his personal vehicles that provided $750,000 in underinsured motorist coverage. And this guy deserved every penny of it. He lost his career because of this accident. So I made a claim with Erie Insurance Company, and Erie Insurance Company said, sorry, regular use exclusion. We're not providing any coverage to him at all. Like I said, I didn't like that very much. So I brought a case in Northampton County called Rush versus Erie, where I attacked the regular use exclusion, alleging that it was invalid and unenforceable and was a violation of express terms of the statute that governed auto insurance. I won the case at the Common Pleas Court level. I won it at the Superior Court level, and along with 2 colleagues of mine, Scott Cooper and Jim Haggerty, we then appealed to the other side appealed to the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. We argued that case in June. My 2 colleagues did that, and I did all the briefing, and now we're waiting for the decision from the court. And I'm very superstitious, so I am not going to stand here and give a prediction on how it came down, because if I did, I guarantee you it would not be my prediction. So I just want to say that we are hopeful, and if we are successful in this endeavor, we will now have opened the door for millions of Pennsylvania residents, including those kids on the bus, you taking your friend's car to work every day, and I could stand here for the next half an hour and give you all these You know, they were saying if your car didn't work for 3 weeks and you used grandma's car, because my car was in the shop, that's regular use of grandma's car. I mean, are you kidding me? But for many years, the courts had upheld that until now, and now we're hoping that the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania throws it out so everyone will be protected.